You're listening to Your Rivers Are Wrong, the podcast.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, or evening, or night.
Or night.
I think we covered all the time zones as usual. Welcome to the Your Rivers Are Wrong podcast. It's me. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Marilyn.
And I'm one of your other co-hosts. My name is Dante.
Exactly. And in this podcast, for the uninitiated, we talk about the wonderful whimsies of world building, the arts and aesthetics of setting up a setting, and telling stories born from it. So, I think we've been on a roll so far.
We have.
I think all the episodes we've been doing, just coming off fresh from the prompt episode, I think we're ready for the second half of the season now.
Yeah.
Do you feel warm here? I feel like sometimes we need to warm up a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we just mapped out the schedule for the next 5 episodes to wrap up the season. And it's just like a straight marathon. You know, every week we've gotten into the habit of recording, finished half of the season. Now the rest of the second half is laid out and ready. And honestly, checking the numbers, we're going to wrap right around mid-June in terms of recordings. And we're going to be clean for a break on our birthday week.
Yeah.
It's going to be fantastic.
Isn't that amazing? Look how organized we are. It's great.
Wow, we're so good at this.
How you been, Dante? How's your week?
My week has been good.
Yeah.
As with the last couple of weeks, the highlight of my week has been another movie. I watched another movie this past week.
I love that this is a recurring thing now.
Yeah, this series of months has just had a whole lot of movie releases that me and my friends just like. It's been Mario, it's been Dungeons and Dragons, and recently, this time, it's the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 movie.
Ooh.
Which is, in my opinion, the best trilogy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's just the most cohesively well written, I suppose. All the movies kind of mesh with each other very, very well. It's a very good package set of movies, as opposed to other Marvel movies that you have to know something from this and this and this and this and the context of this and this. This is just a nice little package, and you can just watch this plus the little Christmas special, like the 2.5 that they put out on Netflix.
Oh, very cute. Yes, I like it.
And it's a good package. It's great. I liked it. It was a really good cap to the trilogy, and I'm happy to have watched it.
So it was the final one then, or are they going to make more?
Yeah, the director is done, as far as we know, making Marvel movies. Most of the actors in that set of characters are retiring from their roles and won't be seen in a very long time. So,
oh, bittersweet.
Yeah, it happens.
That's pretty good. This also sounds like a recommend even for someone like me, who is not a Marvel nerd.
I think you could jump into Guardians of the Galaxy very specifically with no prior knowledge. And just go for it. Because it's set in space. You don't need to know anything about all the heroes on Earth. You don't need to know any of the context of that. I guess you need a little bit of context for the third movie in terms of who dies and disappears, but they kind of spell it out at the top of the movie. So you don't really have to worry too much.
Okay. I'll take it.
Yeah.
I feel like I've tried multiple Marvel films and somehow I've just never really been into it. But this feels like it's a sort of...
Yeah, that's fair.
It's an open door to to sort of try again. Because I do really want to like the Marvel universe, because I think it's great. I just somehow, it never sticks with me. I have this with some stuff, yeah.
I think 10 plus years after the first movie has come out, a lot of Marvel movies have a very high barrier to entry, because you kind of have to know the context of the 40-something pieces of media that came before it.
Yeah.
Which is dumb, but that's kind of how it is. But if I were to recommend anything to a new watcher of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'd probably go the Captain America trilogy and the Guardians trilogy as just standalone good sets of movies.
Okay. It's on the list.
Put it on the list with the 20 other movies we have on the list.
Yes. Yeah, we should really start digging into this one, because I feel like we haven't watched a movie in a while. We should plan it.
Well, we haven't because we started playing TTRPGs instead.
Oh yeah, it's true. We can do all the things. Why is that not a thing? Why isn't there 100 hours in a day?
I wish. Maybe not, because if there were 100 hours in the day, then some corpo out there would be like, hey, people can work for 90 hours a day.
Yeah, it would scale. 8. Let's not go there. I don't like this
Let's
universe.
not think about it.
Yeah.
Speaking of things we've done besides movies in the last couple of months, the game that we were playing for 2 months straight was Tangled Blessings, and that releases digitally today.
Hey!
We're recording this top of May.
That's awesome.
So by the time you guys hear this, it's definitely out. You guys should check it out. It's already on itch. It's on... Yeah, I guess it's on itch. I don't know where else it's hosted, but you can certainly find it there. Wonderful game. Wholly recommend. I don't play too many TTRPGs, but this one I enjoyed a lot.
10 out of 10. We're not sponsored. We just like games. We're nerds.
No, we've mentioned this game like in the last 4 episodes. So
if you missed it by now, I think,
Yeah.
There's no other way that you haven't heard of this. Yeah.
How was your week?
I've also been pretty good this week. I've been very busy working on the funding thing that I'm doing with Cherry, which is lovely and pretty hard because the plan has to be bigger now. I mean, there's a lot of stuff involved in this, but I'm glad we started early. So, we're gearing towards the deadline nicely, I would say. And also fun that coming weekend, I will have a rehearsal weekend for the musical that I'm part of the production of.
Fantastic.
Very nice. Very much looking forward to. And I kind of forgot it happened because I was so busy with the funding thing. And I was like, wait, I have rehearsals this weekend? Oh, that's great. So that's very nice. And I'm looking forward to it a lot. So good stuff.
Is that like a retreat? Do you guys like step away from things, or do you like, how many hours do you devote to that? Is it like a full day thing? Or
no,
it's
basically, a retreat is a fancy word. It's basically like a very long rehearsal for 2 days, but we don't sleep or something. We just sort of have the Saturday and the Sunday, basically from 10 to 6 or something. We're just around and we try to, I think for this one, the aim is to complete the full like staging and the sort of singing of the first act for this one now. And then we're going to have another rehearsal weekend, I think in a few months. I'm not sure. I know it's in my calendar. I don't know dates. I never remember anything. So in the future, we'll do another rehearsal weekend. And then, and it's so fun because if you just hang out for a long time, you can just dig through it, right? Instead of, usually we have like weekly Tuesdays where we rehearse for like 2 hours or something, I think, or 1.5 hours, which is nice. But then, you always have to warm up and stuff. So this is great.
Of course.
Yeah.
Back when I used to help write and perform like skits for my org at school, we would have these long rehearsals. Usually they'd just be like once or twice a week, depending on what you're involved with. But as I said, like in an episode way long ago, we had something called Hell Week. And Hell Week was when you rehearse every single day, Monday to Friday, meet up on the weekend, and then perform on Sunday.
Yeah, that's wild.
So the week leading up, the week leading up to the event is hectic. And there was one year where the Hell Week coincided with our midwinter break. So we properly had no classes at all.
Oh, no.
So we would start bright and early in the morning. We'd all hang out and then we'd rehearse for the whole day, go to sleep, come back the next day and do the whole thing again for the whole week.
Yep.
And
oh my God.
We killed that year.
Yes, let's go. I like it. It sounds terrifying and amazing.
We had such an unreasonable amount of time
to
prepare. But that sounds fun.
Yep. Very exciting.
You guys should just have a sleepover that Saturday to Sunday. You should plan like a little...
That would be very nice. We're probably going to have like dinner or something because people come from like, for me, it's super close by my home because it's in the same city, but others are coming from like further away. So I think people are going to hang if we're there anyway, which is nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Sounds good. Okay.
Anyway, we're not a musical podcast. We're not a movie podcast. Well, I mean, secretly we are. But what we're actually here for, what are we here for, Dante? I think it's world building and storytelling. Am I right?
Pretty sure it's, well, unless we've changed it as of last episode, it is world building and storytelling.
Last time I heard, we were still here for world building and storytelling.
Did you send a memo? I didn't get, because, we could switch gears if that's what you're down for.
From the others from our company of Your Rivers Are Wrong that don't exist. Yeah, that can give us
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, enough of the fun here. Actually,
no more fun.
No more fun. Yeah, we're out of the fun, which rolls in nicely to this topic, actually, that I prepared.
Oh, yeah?
Because,
yeah?
Dante, this week, I want to talk about two things, which is basically the difference between tragedy and comedy.
Interesting.
Talking about fun and no fun. I feel like I've been thinking about this let me properly introduce this a little bit.
Of course.
I feel like I've been thinking about this ever since we talked about going to the A Little Life play in London that's happening right now, right? That we talked about. This is based on a very depressing but very impressive book. And the play is supposed to be equally impressive and depressing. And I'm not sure if I want to go. For the uninitiated, it's really great. I love tragedy. I love drama. I love serious stuff. But also too much seriousness or too much drama is very intense, And ever since I'm sort of on the fence of buying these tickets or not, right? I also was thinking on a quote that sort of stayed with me after the Exandria Unlimited Calamity series that Critical Role was doing, a sort of an RPG created by Brennan Lee Mulligan. He was the game master of it. Amazing show. You should watch it. It's on YouTube. And they had a sort of wrap up after talk of it, right? Where they talked about how it went and how everyone
Right.
felt and how amazing the story was. And yeah, everyone involved was sort of hanging out and sitting on couches and stuff. It was great. And there, Brennan sort of made a compliment to Sam Riegel, one of the players, about delivering the perfect joke in the moment of absolute tragedy and drama while the rest of the world was sort of crumbling around them. The character of Sam Riegel made a almost ridiculously lighthearted joke about having to do another commercial as part of his final broadcast before literally the world ended. And I think that part, the way he sort of talked about how comedy relates to tragedy in such a moment, I think it's really interesting. And well, for instance, in this play, right, that I was thinking of, but also in more works and also in general, like, how do you sort of navigate the balance, right, between the lightheartedness and the, I guess, the heavy side of your story? Yeah, so we should talk about it. I think it's worth an episode.
Yeah, we could just start with the basics. What is a comedy? What is a tragedy? A comedy is a lighthearted story that centers around humor and usually has a happy ending. A tragedy is a more serious story that usually has some sort of sad ending. And basically in like Greek literature or Greek theater, they were often like diametrically opposed, as in like you would have stories shipped as either a comedy or a tragedy, but over time you could kind of blend the two topics. Because they're so separate in terms of their energies and emotions, you can use one to provide levity to the other. Like for a tragedy, a comedy can provide this humor and this happiness in the midst of bleak despair. Like if you're looking for a story to kind of have these emotional roller coaster moments, you need things to break the sadness every now and then. And that's comedy. In the same way, in a comedy, this doesn't usually happen, but if you had some sort of terrible event into a comedic story, you can add the sort of depth to the characters that would normally just be lighthearted and fun, and add levels to humanity in terms of the characters and treating them like real people and not just the butt of a joke. So they work very well together. For me, I enjoy comedy in short form and tragedy in long form.
Interesting. Okay. What does that mean?
I think I'm thinking about how I consume basically both. I don't know if you can call them genres or motifs or themes.
Yeah.
But
forms, I don't know. Yeah.
But if I ever want to process a tragedy, right? If that's ever something that occurs to me, like I want to feel a deep story right now. I'm not looking for like a one-off 60-second pull where like, hey, this man's dog died. But that's it. I'm just like, that's not good. Right? I feel like one of the strong points of comedy is it can be quick. It can be like immediate. The reaction is visceral and happy and hits those dopamine receptors real quick, which is why comedy, speaking from a content creator's point of view, does really well in short form, does really well in shorts and on TikToks. And that's why a lot of the content that succeeds on these internet platforms are comedy, are funny. That allows the natural charisma of somebody to shine through. Whereas tragedy is not something that people easily invest in. It's not something that people are ready to kind of process on a very quick video.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
For tragedy to really hit hard, be a good story, you have to find investment in the characters. You have to give them first the high and then the low. And then with that low, people want a satisfying payoff. So ending it on a sad note isn't always the way to go. Notably complex for people who make this sort of material, who post sort of context. I don't know if this is the direction you were going, but seeing it from like, do I enjoy comedy and tragedy, I think was the top question for me.
Sure, yeah.
And I realized there's like considerations to it. There's details that I need to hit. Like comedy in long form for me, kind of tiring. It's good, but like not for a long time. But tragedy, I could dig into for either like a 4-hour movie or a 20-hour book. Like I could dive into the sadness of that. Give me time to be invested and I'm all in. That's kind of how I'm kicking off this topic, so to speak.
I mean, that's great. I honestly didn't really think about that. But somehow for you then, there's a sort of time limit involved, or a sort of, perhaps the tragedy, the way that you enjoy it is more because you can dig deeper into the characters, or there's more layers that need uncovering. And somehow with comedy, either we feel like it's not the case or it really isn't there often. I think that's so fascinating because very often works in itself have a lot of both in them, right? I think honestly the greatest, at least from my perspective, the greatest works that I have watched or listened to or read, are kind of a combination of both, because the balancing act is a delicate one.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't really think about how short form or long form can change how we interact with it in a way. So I'm curious then in that case, because we literally talked about this like a second ago. You come from like a background of, writing skits and stuff. I assume there's very much both involved. Like, is it different?
Right.
Is it different for you if you write it yourself, for instance? How do you approach it then?
How do I approach it? Well, I remember very specifically, I guess to put context in, I was part of a cultural org in college, and there was kind of an intercollegiate competition that would happen every year where we would perform skits that were culturally relevant as well as entertaining for the audience that is watching, which is mostly, for me, the Filipino American community, as well as their friends and family and relatives and some judges that are notably well-known or famous or whatever. So there's a lot of people that you have to connect with here, and you kind of have to reach into these cultural touchstones to understand them. Now, when it comes to telling a good story, and usually you only have like 10 minutes to do it, there's a very strict 10-minute time limit. You got to have a good arc, a good trajectory, have people invest in the characters real quick, throw them that big curveball, give them the climax, end it with a dance or something, Generally.
Got it.
That's in the formula, and
I'm writing it all down.
So,
yes.
So oftentimes we would delve into the history of the Philippines, which is not always so pleasant, Part of the journey, I suppose, of being, at least for me, this is very much a tangent, I suppose. Part of the journey of being a Filipino American is understanding the struggles and trials that your family took to get to America. And also the dichotomy of living in America, which is almost always a bit more privileged than living in the Philippines, which for many of us, especially in my generation, in terms of like the people born in the 80s and 90s, we come from a generation of people who were brought over to America for the purpose of work, for the purpose of jobs, to have a new life and a new future. And that's very much a cultural touchstone with many people within my sort of decade of first generation Filipino Americans. So these stories we'd make at these skits were sad because they would delve into the stories of our parents, the stories of our grandparents, our family that we really want to kind of drive home. And in doing so, a lot of these stories were like bummers. They were very they'd lean into like the drama of the family struggle of bridging the gap between two generations, then their mindsets and ideals in a perfect life for their family, so to speak. And a lot of these stories, while they got relatively heavy, we had to, into the script, make sure that there were moments of levity. We had to make sure there were comic breaks because we would pitch, me and my co-writer, we would pitch a script to the other team and they'd be like, it's so sad. It's so sad. There's no breaks. Why is it sad all the way through? Every scene is an argument. Every scene is a moment of tension. Where's the levity? And we're like, okay, we got to find whichever one of our org members is the funniest, who can really deliver the lines in the moments of most stress.
I love how it's based on like how much humor someone possesses.
We have a limited cast. No,
I get it. Yeah, this is all low budget, quick, That's how you do it.
Maybe like one or two of them are like theater people. Like we don't have a cast, but we have a passionate one.
It doesn't matter. It's great.
You work with what you got. So writing in moments of comedy was almost essential to make sure that we could pivot from one scene to the next without being a bummer the whole way through. We really wanted to drive home the powerful message of whatever loss happened or whatever conflict happened. But we also wanted to do it in a way that the audience wasn't feeling like they had to leave or dissociate from the situation or not pay attention to the story in an effort of not feeling terrible, There has to be moments of brightness in the tragedy to convince people that this is not only a real human story, but also one that entertains the highs and lows of a natural progression. So there are silver linings in these dark spots, I guess that's my experience with writing things. It's like making points of comedy within often tragic stories is essential. It's essential. If a book is a bummer the whole way through, it's a bummer the whole way through, and there's no salvaging it.
Yep. I guess that's pretty accurate. I think for me, what's the most relevant or fascinating part of this conversation, I guess the way I usually think about these, whatever you call it, genres, forms, is in very separate terms, right? Like very often a play or a work is categorized as a tragedy or as a comedy, or a person is a comedian or a serious actor, or something. It feels like very often the scales are kind of tipped to one side. And I think it's very interesting to think about where something flips from tragedy to comedy as well, right? And also how much depth is involved, kind of talking about your point from earlier. Apparently, somehow it feels logical that tragedy that will only experience or, read about or perceive tragedy in works where we get to know the characters better. Like somehow comedy is more superficial, perhaps. Not in a bad way, but in literally like on the surface.
Right.
And somehow the tool of making things lighter or bringing something back to a superficial level or to a simple level can bring then a sort of lightheartedness to it, if you know what I mean. So I wonder, like, because sometimes, a comedy can be a full play. It can be like a long-term work as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this links a little bit as well. I guess I'm just asking questions, but I don't really have answers for any of these.
Go for it, yeah.
But it links a little bit to the previous topic we did, I think, 2 episodes ago with like cliches and tropes and stuff, where somehow like if something becomes more of a caricature in a way, or, a superficial version of itself, the comedy is easier to access, or it's already more funny, or it reduces a character to the basics that somehow is, I guess, easier to poke fun of or to make fun of, I'm not sure how that happens, but somehow that seems to be kind of how it works out. Like to make something simple is very often becoming or turning it into something more lighthearted than to see all the complexity of it. And then only in that space, tragedy seems to exist or something. Yeah, I don't know. That's a very confusing and fascinating thing to me, how that works or something. Yeah.
I think comedy helps ground the situation. Sometimes when tragedy is allowed to go on for a little too long, people kind of get lost in the weight of the heaviness and the sadness and the sorrow. But when you throw kind of a joke into it, you remind yourself, oh, by the way, we're just human, and this is like sometimes this is a painful existence. There's a moment of like, okay, let's get our bearings, let's pick ourselves back up. I actually had 2 interesting points on that. The faster point would be when we play D&D, right? And the dungeon master throws us this ridiculous situation like, by the way, you're fighting the master of the cosmos, Ergragagrix, or whatever it is,
Sure, yeah. Fill in fantasy name here.
and if you don't save the world in 7 days, everybody dies. Sometimes that's just the situation.
Yep.
And that's a terrible, dark
There's a
moment,
bunch of stakes,
right?
yeah.
And everybody kind of grapples with their own mortality and speaks of like things that they can no longer do or manage or become. But after you guys get all that out, sometimes you just have to deal with the absurdity of the situation and be like, well, this is ridiculous, but we got to do something, right? And once you get everybody back on the same page where it's like, welcome to the stakes, time to deal with it. Wallowing in your sorrow does not progress the story,
Yeah, I think that's actually a great point, because then you talk about sort of the paralyzing quality of, something tragic. Yeah.
Tragic.
I was like, tragic? That's not a word. Something tragic happening. Yeah. And I think sometimes in terms of like how many tragedy can you allow or can you sort of account for in a play or in anything, in a work, there's also something that's called sort of torture for the sake of torture, right? When sometimes people can be quite critical on a work because there's just so much tragedy and sadness and stuff to be able to, well in it or something. And sometimes people are like, I don't know if that's good writing or if that's good enough for me. Like I need the balance to it, and it's not happening here because there's too much tragedy. Like it's too tragic, which makes it sort of stop in its tracks a little bit.
Right.
Similar to what you were saying, like the progress is very far from it. And that's something interesting to remember as well. Like you need also the switches in order to see the different aspects of both your work, but also of the characters and the people that are in the situation, right? And if you only continually see it from sort of the, I guess, the dark side of it, the dark angle, there's nothing new happening, how sort of blunt that might sound, but that is also the case. And similar to the other way, right? If you only throw jokes at us all the time, it also doesn't work, because then at some point I'm like, this is just like a vessel for, I guess, slapstick or something. Like I'm gonna do something else,
Yeah, like if you lean too much into comedy, you're missing the weight. There's a difference between somebody making light of the situation and somebody choosing not to grapple with the weight of the situation. Just fully separated from it. Like, hey, take this seriously, get your head in the game. And
also you can't make light of the situation if the situation is already like light and ultra humorous. Like there's nothing to come from in terms of like, from tragedy to comedy or vice versa, if you don't have the other side of it. Yeah.
It's actually really interesting you picked this topic, because I feel like what I brought up right at the start is a very good example of it.
Oh.
Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is Guardians of the Galaxy in general is perceived by the the Marvel fan base, yeah, that would be the word, the Marvel fan base, to be the more jokey, comedy-based storyline in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, everybody knows how to quip, everybody's really funny, and they crack jokes the entirety of the movie. That's just how it is. But Guardians 3, very specifically, leans heavy into tragedy, leans heavy into sadness and loss and devastation and what the stakes are, and kind of reclaiming what is gone or making peace with yourself, right? A lot of the movie is very sad. And a lot of people in the theaters were like, hey, I thought this was the jokey comedy series. I thought this was the,
what am I watching?
This cast was funny,
Why do I care so much?
And that is, I guess, just to put it out there, I think they balanced it very well. The characters managed to be funny in light of these desperate times. And that has been a major criticism of the Marvel Cinematic Universe for a couple of years now, that a lot of the writing as of late has been making jokes for the sake of jokes. The story has been very sad, very tragic. Right. And every now and then a character would like put out a small quip and it'd be like funny, but it's like, okay, did that really do anything though? Like, where's the weight? Stop joking. This is serious, right? And sometimes the weight was very much missing. But what Guardians does very well is that all of these characters are by nature, by character, funny people, and every joke that they make lends to their character. It's not out of the blue. It's not from a writer's room per se. It feels like something from the heart that really builds their character and exemplifies what makes them that character. I could go into specifics, but it's basically comedy done right. Like making quips for the sake of if someone says a joke and you think about it and think if every other Marvel character could have said that joke, then it's not a good joke. It has to come from somewhere. It has to be part of their character and come from their character. Exactly. Like only that character could have made that joke and is perfect for the scenario.
Sounds like good writing to me. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, works out.
It also reminded me of one more thing, which is a movie that is honestly one of my favorites. It's by Taika Waititi. I think it was his first big feature film. It's called Boy. Not a lot of people have heard of this, but it's really, really good. And it's I think a little autobiographical, but it's basically fiction, right? Yeah, sort of super short summary. It's sort of set in New Zealand where Taika Waititi grew up. And it's a very lighthearted movie, but because the whole setting and basically I think how I described this in my review of it, because I'm sort of writing reviews mostly from the movies that I want to remember or that I like a lot, is that I was saying it feels like the absolute most fun youth that you could have, like as a sort of Pippi Longstocking-esque, adventures in the woods and blah, blah, blah. But then actually I realized it's just sort of extreme poverty and also like a pretty shitty family situation. And then because the whole film is so lighthearted and so childish and, the main character is a young boy and he's just, he's having fun with his brother and he's trying to look for his dad and he goes to school, all the stuff. But because the whole subtext or the sort of undertone of the thing is pretty bleak, the comedy becomes more funny and the subtext becomes more sad because both of them are in such a stark contrast between of each other, right?
Perfect.
And I think it's really well done. And I think why I love Taika Waititi so much is because he does it so well. He does it a lot in his movies, this sort of strange back and forth between it, which is, I think, really nice. We should watch it. It's got to be on the list. I want to watch it again now.
Put it on the list.
Put it on the list.
The list.
When in doubt, put it on the list.
Day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess they're both good. They both speak to deep and sometimes dark parts of ourselves and the core of human emotion, I suppose. They bring out the best and worst in people and bring out the feelings of sympathy and or camaraderie. And using both together is difficult and rewarding, I suppose.
I guess that's true. That's a good wrap up there.
Good topic. Fantastic topic.
Yeah. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Pat on the back.
Pat. Yeah, we deserve the pats.
Transcontinental pats.
As we do. We've become very good at that, I think. Hey, guess what we also do on this podcast? Before we leave you to it, there's one thing more that we also love to do all the time. We did it a whole episode last episode. It's prompts, baby. I got a prompt for you. We never have to match this to the topic, but somehow we always do. I don't know why. It feels relevant.
It feels like it should.
Yeah, I mean, it also kind of makes sense, right? Since we're in the right thinking space for it, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Are you ready for today's prompt?
I don't know yet. You got to tell me, and I'll tell you.
It's true. You're literally unaware of it yet. Here goes nothing. I want you to
Want me to? Sorry, I'm interrupting. I should just let you go. Let you fly.
No, you're good. For this prompt, I would like you to make a character that is the funniest in town with a very bleak backstory. And you can fill that in however you like. You can either sort of explain it or just give me a concept pitch, whatever you're feeling. I want the contrast is what I want.
I'm thinking. I have an idea. And as a tiny tangent, someone who is so good at this is the writer of One Piece, Oda. Most of the cast of the Straw Hat crew of this pirate-themed manga is funny. They're funny people. But they have the most tragic backstories. It's the saddest thing. It's like whenever they introduce a character that we're remotely invested in, just expect them to have the most devastating of backstories.
Oh, no.
So I'm trying to tap into my inner Oda right now, and I'm trying to
feel it
really
out.
pull that out.
I love how we ended with pirates. Never enough pirates in my life. Yeah.
Never enough pirates. Yeah, sure. Give me a letter. I need a letter to start this off.
T.
Yeah. This is a story about Teddy. Teddy is a man in his mid-40s. He's a bit rotund. He's got a bit of weight to him, horizontally abundant, as we might say. He wanders around town with a big old smile on his face, and every day in town square, he would find himself a little bench to stand upon, and he would read out a bunch of his best strokes. And he would pull out this ratty little notebook.
I love him. That's great.
From his backpack, and he'd say something very funny, which I cannot improvise. I'm not that kind of.
That's okay.
Improviser. Sorry.
You're good.
And people would sometimes stop and listen, often simply out of endearment. They just kind of like the guy. But his jokes didn't really land ever. He wasn't a fantastic comedian at any sort of point, but he kind of became just a landmark, so to speak, of the little town. Like, people knew of Teddy. They knew every morning to afternoon, if you come there at 12 on the dot, he would be out there telling these jokes from this little notebook.
It's so wholesome.
And eventually, one day, one of the theater members from a theater across town wanders onto this side of the city one of these days and runs into Teddy, and he's telling all of these jokes, and he's got a surprising following. He's got a surprising little, like maybe 15, 20 people just listening to him.
Yeah.
Not really laughing at his jokes as much as just appreciating his ambiance. and this member kind of walks up to him and says, "Hey, you got a little bit of charisma on you. Would you like to perform this at the theater?" Teddy hears that and stops, and he immediately begins to cry. There's a dense sadness that comes from him. And he kind of buries his face in this notebook that he's carried with him. And he nods and he says, "Yes, of course, just absolutely." So a week passes, 2 week passes. They organize the details. It's not going to be a show that anybody pays for in particular. It's going to be kind of a community event where local performers can go out and do their thing. It's on the other side of the town, much richer, much more populous. The crowd is guaranteed to be in the hundreds. And after a juggling act, after a sword swallower, after a breakdancing crew, Teddy stands up on that stage and brings with him this little notebook. And you see the audience kind of take him in, kind of get used to him, not too well dressed, kind of wearing what he always wears, just a regular old sweater and slacks. And, it's got a couple stains of the day, but, he gets there and he walks on the stage and he opens his notebook and he says, "I've had this for a really long time. This book is just about as old as I am. It's entirely full, except for the last 10 pages, which I filled in last night. This book used to belong to my father. When I was growing up, he had aspirations to be a performer, a comedian even. As he fed me and clothed me and raised me, he'd read all of these jokes to me, and whatever I laughed at, he'd keep in, and whatever I didn't, he'd cross out. And over the first 10 years of my life, there were hundreds of jokes written in here, and half of them with lines through them. So you know that whatever's left in this book is the best of the best. Jokes that never failed to make me laugh." And he said, when he finally makes it to the big stage, he'll take all of the best jokes from the hundreds of pages in this little notebook and put them on the last 10 pages and bring them to the biggest audience he's ever seen. I'm glad to be delivering these lines for him. So, what's long, brown, and sticky?
I don't know. What's long, brown, and sticky? Oh my god.
It's a stick. And that's the joke he starts with, and he rattles off 99 more, and the crowd is entranced.
Roaring.
That's where I'm going to end the story.
Oh my god. Teddy! Teddy! I love him. He's such a good boy. Oh. This was so wholesome from the beginning, and it didn't stop being wholesome. See, this is why it's great. Now I care for him more, because I know his layers. Very good.
That's all I got.
There was even a joke in there, you know? I think that was great. 10 out of 10.
Far be it from me. That is the only joke I could think of.
Amazing.
The entire time I was spinning the prompt, I'm like, I'm going to wrap this up in a joke. I cannot think of any joke besides this one.
I refuse to leave me. I refuse to leave before I tell a joke. Honestly, humor, like improvising humor is the hardest thing in the world. So, you know, I could not do it better than you did. Amazing. All the applause. The audience cheers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Well, I guess we're wrapping up this episode. How do you want to wrap this up?
Yep. It's the end of the episode. No, wait.
Thanks.
Okay, bye. No. Oh, no. I'm so bad at this. We didn't even do the thing. Wait, we should leave.
What is the thing? What thing?
There's one more thing.
Get back in this room.
Yeah. Get back here.
Get back in here.
There's this one more thing that we still need to discuss. I don't know if we have time for it now, but, you know.
Oh, we might not.
As our title says, your rivers are wrong. Just wanted to point that out, even though our title says it, like it's pretty clear by now, maybe.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of it, you know, just making sure. I guess we'll cover it.
Yeah,
eventually.
We should detail the how and why eventually.
Yes, we could maybe make a schedule, make a.
Can we schedule that? Yeah, we've scheduled the rest of the season. Maybe we could
schedule that one
somewhere on there.
Yeah, let's put it
that's good
on the cool.
But not today. Not today.
Not today. Thank you guys so much for listening to our chaotic ramblings. Equally chaotic as it is every time. See you later. Bye bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Your Rivers Are Wrong. If you have any thoughts for topics, prompts, or if you just want to share your thoughts, you can reach us at yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. That's yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. Big thank you goes to Martin Skelligans for our intro and outro music, and most importantly, thank you for listening. We hope to catch you at our next episode. Have a good one.